For those of you who don't know, I build a lot of technology, manufacture PCBs, write computer code. All of this room is dedicated to that. It's half a hobby, half a job. It's very much a passion of mine, and I have been doing this here on this farm for like 10 years. And that has meant that I have built an awful lot of projects here on the farm. Some of them have been big successes, still using them today. An awful lot of the things I've built and tinkered with and developed over the years have not been a success, and by that I mean they may have worked perfectly well, but if when they break I don't fix them, that means it's a bad idea. So today's video we're going to look at the countless projects which I have developed and built on this farm. So we will come back here at the end of the video and I'll give you a really quick tour of the lab, and we're going to spend some time looking at my farm software, which is probably my greatest achievement, the most useful thing I've ever made. But we're going to start the video by going out onto the farmyard, doing a tour around the farm, and as we go, when I see little pieces of used technology or derelict, neglected technology, I will stop, talk you through the idea, talk you through why it is good or why it is bad. We are going to start in the milking parlor, mainly because my office is just upstairs, so this is the first place we came to. And the first piece of technology is also one of the most interesting, and it is my little touchscreen that sits right here. And basically what this does is it gives you management data at the point where you need it. So if I'm drying cows off, want to know how long a cow has been dry when she calves in, want to know if a cow is clear to go into the bulk milk tank after calving, this little screen tells me it all, gives me the list of cows to dry off, the list of cows that are due to calve in the next 3 weeks. I'll show you all that in a second. One of the other things it does is it allows you to input your feed deliveries. So whenever meal is blown into that bin outside, I can enter how many tons I got delivered, and it also allows me to enter my milk dockets for how much milk I sold. So because of its position, it's super handy to do. You walk past it all the time, and that means that it keeps your graphs and your data all up to date. You will have to excuse the cobwebs. If Red Tractor seen this, they would have a fit, but we'll not worry. So this is our cows due to go dry. This is how many days they are. They go red if they're under 80 days. This is our calving schedule. So these two cows have actually aborted the calves like in the summer, so they should be taken off that. But the next cow to calve is number 2. And today we had a cow calve, I think it was 7495. So she was dry 41 days and she was due to calve 5 days ago. We use short duration dry cow tubes. So our cows only need to be dry 35 days. Our target is 50, but sometimes we do slip under that. And then over here, we have our high cell count cows. So it goes back 3 months, so you can see chronic cows. So for example, the worst cell count cow at the minute is 532. Her average cell count for this lactation was over 2,000. She is definitely a cow to be culled. So another thing that screen was designed to do was to read the weigh cells on our meal bin. Now these weigh cells were used for a long time, up until like 7 or 8 months ago when they stopped working. They were really useful, and I really want to get these working again, but I haven't got around to it. And the reason I haven't got around to it is because I have to completely redesign the system I used to read them. So these 5-ton weigh cells came straight from China. They were like £60 each, so they were for nothing. And this is the little box I built to read them. And then this box was connected via USB to the screen you've seen inside the door. So the issue with that system is the USB connection. The distance is too long, and the USB, whenever it gets out of sync, it loses connection and you have to plug it out and plug it in again to get it to work again. So the redesigned system will be connected over Ethernet, and it will follow the same computer coding logic I'm using for everything else in the farm. Hence why it needs a big upgrade and not just a fix. Hence why it hasn't been done. I will get to it at some point. It's like a nice to have, not an essential feature. The reason why weigh cells on your meal bin is a really nice thing to have is not so you can keep track of how much meal you get delivered or when you're necessarily going to run out. The sight glasses do that job pretty well, But I found the biggest benefit was that wee touchscreen would tell me how much I was actually using per day based on my deliveries and the weigh cells, and how much my computer thought I was using through the parlor feeders and the parlor software. And when them two numbers got out of sync, you knew you needed to recalibrate your parlor feeders. I really, really missed that. Next up, we have our temperature sensors for the plate cooler. Excuse the fact that the box is now just lying on top of the plate cooler. It was stuck to the wall, but it's clearly fallen off and I never bothered to fix it. That's going to be a theme of this video, believe me. But we are measuring the temperature of the water coming in. Sorry if I let it focus. We're measuring the temperature of the water coming into the plate cooler, and we're measuring the temperature of the milk going out, which is up here as well. And we're also measuring the temperature of the water going out. So the really nice thing about them sensors and that little project was the initial findings. So the first couple of weeks of data proved really, really valuable and saved me a couple of £100 a year. I know it's not a lot, but that's a reality of how much I saved on my cooling cost. I took 2 degrees off my milk temperature by running more water through the plate cooler, and now that I'm continuously monitoring it, the temperatures are something like the water going in is 10 degrees, the water coming out is 14 or 15 degrees, the milk going in is 30 degrees, the milk coming out is 18 degrees. So people have said to me about putting a heat exchanger in to preheat water for the boilers, stuff like that. But whenever the water coming out of my plate cooler is only coming out at like 14, 15 degrees, that's only 5 degrees warmer than it went in at. There's very little heat energy in every litre of water to extract, if that makes sense. So really valuable project. Every farm should actually have one of these. They're not that expensive to build, but as I said earlier, now that it has been running for over a year, I'm very rarely looking at the data. So probably the next addition to that project would be a little touchscreen, something that sits on this wall that at milking time it flicks on and just shows you the stats of the milking you've just done. So if there's a problem, if you're losing water pressure, etc., you can instantly tell, because otherwise you don't look at the data. Before we go into this room, I apologize for the mess. I apologize for how this was left, but it's all working. It's working really well. It's another one of them projects that I meant to finish this winter, and so far I have had time to do absolutely nothing. So eventually I'll get to it, but this is our power monitoring system. I know they're not even in a case, I apologize. They've sat here for over a year, and these are measuring the electric into the farm. So this one is measuring the 3-phase coming in from the main supply, and then this one is measuring the 3-phase going to the milking parlour. They are unclipped. Why are they unclipped? What? I have absolutely no idea why they were unclipped. I actually haven't looked at my power data in a few months. Again, if the data is not accessible, it's not useful. I need to make it more accessible. One of the really cool things about this project is I am measuring the flashes of light on my meter board. Them flashes of light are how many kilowatt hours I'm billed for, and I'm using them flashes to calibrate all the rest of these sensors. So the actual amount you're billed for is calibrating all the rest of the sensors, which means that you don't have to be exactly accurate when you're reading these, because you can reference it all back to the flashes. If I was making a commercial product out of this, my plan is to only read the flashes on the meter board and then try to work out the power usage by using some smart software, because farms kind of stick to the same milking times at 6:30, milking times at 4:30, heating water in the night, that sort of thing. It's exactly the same story with that project as it is with the plate cooler sensors. The data they generated was extremely useful for a short amount of time. It allowed me to fix things on the farm and fix wasted energy. But after I'd fixed them, the ongoing monitoring didn't provide that much useful information. And because it wasn't providing much useful information, I stopped looking at it. Because I stopped looking at it, it stopped providing a benefit. So again, a wee screen sitting at this door, which just shows you how much power used for that day's milking, allows you to see problems if they crop up. A great example of what I discovered only through measuring my power was that my boiler was coming on at 1 a.m. and my night rate electricity only started at 2 a.m. So I was wasting like £500 a year. Over 50% of our electric, by the way, goes to heat water. It's like 60%, it's insane. So that allowed me to make a saving just by adjusting a timer clock. Another great example was we were heating the water too early and we were losing 3 kilowatts an hour from our boiler. So just throwing away, at the time the electric price was high, it was like £1 an hour for no reason. So I changed the boiler to only come on at 3:30 in the morning, which I knew how long it took to boil the water because I'd been recording the energy use. So the boiler just finishes heating the water about 10 minutes before the milking starts. So we're minimizing heat loss. Little things like that don't cost any money, but they save you money. So the two combined of the flow meter sensors and the parlor electric sensors, they saved me, and again, this is going to be disappointing, but this is realistic, they saved me like £1,600 a year. So if I could develop a product that was priced at half that price, £800, and done flow meters on your plate coolers and power management, power recording, it would be a no-brainer, basically for every farm in the country. But that's quite a bit of work, and I like to have things running on my own farm for at least a year, preferably longer, before I decide that it's a genuinely good idea and it's a reliable product. Okay, we will continue our walk and we will stop at our foot baths. So this is a fairly old project now, 3 years it's been in, and this is our foot bath filling controller. Basically a flow meter and 2 relay valves connected to the internet, and when I send the command to fill the foot bath, it puts 400 litres into each foot bath and then turns off. Very useful, very simple. That little flow meter foot bath thing is also on the redesign list. I'm trying to standardize everything to the same design standard, so it makes it easier for me when I'm writing the code to control everything. Everything is going to be changed to one of these, which is the little orange boxes or blue boxes for the flow meter controls. My idea is that red boxes will be for power, orange boxes will be for foot baths, flow temperature sensors, random stuff, and then blue boxes will be for the water controllers. This is our first of 3 water controllers. This is basically measuring how much water goes through this big giant pipe. And we will continue our journey onto the cow house next. So the cow house has 2 things which are controlled electronically. The first one has been in operation for 3 or 4 years, and that is the light controller. So to turn on and off the lights depending on whatever time I set on the database. And then we've also added the water drinker controllers, which are new. So I'll jump over here and show you this side. There will eventually be 4 water controllers in here and 1 light controller. The box over here, the little grey one, that is our light controller, and that basically connects to the internet and turns on 240 volt relays, which are in the white box up above it, and that turns on and off all the lights in our cow house. I did wire it myself. The electricians were very nervous whenever they came to check my work, so they tidied it up a lot, added lots of breakers in to make sure no one was killed. So it is safe. I do not recommend doing electrics yourself, to be honest. The blue box with the little Farm Theory logo on it, that is our water controller. That is controlling this drinker. If you didn't watch the 2-part series on me building this, I explain it in much more detail. I hope you like my new branded jacket. It's back to front, but it says Farm Theory and then our operative. It used to say Deal Farm, but someone complained that I was a bad representation of Deal Farm, and they literally told me to stop wearing the jackets they give me. To which I was honestly dumbfounded, to be perfectly honest. So what I'm going to do to piss them off is just colour out the deal and make them all Farm Theory jackets. I think that's a good idea. This little house was built for my automatic heifer feeding weighing crush. That's why this pad is here as well with the slope. Basically, these gates used to open, heifers used to come out here, go into the little crush, eat meal, and the meal was allocated based on the weight of the heifer. and it was really good, to be honest. The data I was getting from it was incredible, but it was an incredible amount of work to build, and the heifers totally destroyed it. If I have to engineer anything or build anything, it's going to feel it is not my strength at all. The general idea of being able to weigh your bulling heifers every day, feed them according to weight, is incredibly useful. Like, there is a business case there for someone to build a proper product. I keep saying I'm going to do all these projects. There's no way I have time to do everything, but a really nice project, something I might return to in the future. I just need someone else to build the crush so they can't destroy it. Here is another failed project. This used to be another light controller because I installed heaps of lights in this heifer house because I used to AI the heifers manually. My mic keeps disconnecting. Apologise for the difference in sound. What I mean by manually AI heifers is we didn't synchronize them, so I had to watch them, and they all used to run at night, and I had cameras set up. There's actually one at the front of the house right there, so I could watch them, and I needed lights to be able to do that. So that's why these lights were installed. The controller was taken away a few months ago because I meant to update it to the new version. I never got around to doing that, and because the lights aren't actually that necessary, we have manual lights in there anyway. It was never replaced. Again, eventually I'll get to it at some point, hopefully. Now we get to our fuel tank. This is another derelict project. It was going perfectly well for 4 or 5 years, but I've let it fall into disrepair. Basically, this is a cheap manual flow meter that measures how much diesel you use. I put a little sensor inside this which counts the turns of the cogwheel, so it outputs how many litres are going through this cheap flow meter. That then comes into this little box. The problem why this isn't working is because the internet cable was cut a few months ago, so if I try to start the program, if it will let me. No, don't do that. 1 second, I'm going to get it. If I try to start the program, it doesn't get an internet connection, so it doesn't connect. But that little box has been there now for 5, 6 years. It still works perfectly well. I just need to get the internet connection to finish it off. The idea was that when you fill up a tractor, you enter the hours on the tractor, you enter what tractor it was, and it logs the fuel use against it. And then you have really accurate fuel records, and you can tell how much you used for each job, and you can divide up your costs amongst your machines much more accurately. But the reason why this hasn't been fixed is because whilst it's interesting data and it's somewhat useful, what are the actions you can take that will make a difference? Like, what are you going to do by knowing how much diesel your Case Puma uses when mowing? There's nothing you can do with it. Yes, it's interesting, it's useful. It's not something I think every farmer needs to be recording. Maybe contractors is more useful, I'm not sure. You can let me know if you think this sort of like little fuel recording system connected to an app on your phone perhaps is a good idea. Oh yeah, one other part of it which is actually a good idea is it had a depth sensor in the tank which reported how much diesel I had left down to that little screen in the milking parlour. I really missed that. I have ran out of diesel 3 or 4 times this year, which is not good. Probably do need to fix that now I think about it. Next up, we will go look at some of the technology in the tractors. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you do, I build tech for a company, Slurry, and one of the things I build for them is called a tanker timer. So it tells you how much slurry is left in your slurry tanker, so it's like a better sight glass. Tells you your application rate, so it's like having a flow meter in your tanker, and it also counts how much you've spread throughout your day. There's 2 types. There's a simple type which you just need a box in your cab. I'll show you that in a second. But there is another type which is a type I was very skeptical about, but now I am like, it's a really good product. Like, it actually is a really good product, and it is the one with the hydraulic sensor. So on our slurry tanker we have this extra cable and this hydraulic sensor. The new versions are a lot more compact. They're like the size of these 2 fittings combined. There's none of this big bit, but this was the early prototype, and it plugs in to a box in the tractor, which I'll show you now. Generally, the feedback on these little boxes I've got has been really good, and loads of people have told me that they're a really brilliant idea and they're great. And someone like 2 weeks ago told me they didn't like them and they wanted a switch back, and that really surprised me. So I think this is a good idea, but maybe everyone doesn't, I don't know. But anyway, I need to plug this in, give me 1 second. So this little box is one of them things I use every day when I'm spreading slurry now, and you'll have to take my word for it. If I can't be bothered using something, I don't use it. Like my GPS is sitting here, if I'm spreading slurry, I never turn it on, okay? But this little box, I do. And it plugs into the tanker hydraulic sensor through this cable here. And basically, if you are spreading slurry and you have the hydraulic sensor on your tanker, you turn this box on and you don't touch anything else the rest of the day. It tells you what percentage is left in your tanker, what application rate you're putting on, and keeps track of how much you spread. And if my dad, who normally does the spreading while I bring slurry to him, I can turn this box on and it keeps track of how much he spreads and at what rate he's been spreading it all day. So really useful little box. I'll show you it in action. I'll show you the basics. So if you don't have a hydraulic sensor and you do it manually, you start the timer like that, and as it counts, it'll give you a percentage of what's left in your slurry tanker. You can see it says 4.2 kilometers an hour. That is to apply 1950 gallons of slurry. That will change once we calibrate it to green to mean it's set. It's counting up your total, and then you have a relay control down here, which is for your macerator and to fold up your booms and your dribble bar. So it's simple, but it's really effective. Them little boxes have been surprisingly reliable. I've built well over 200 of them now. We've had a few issues, a few failures. The vast majority of them seem to be a voltage issue with the tractor, whether it be reverse voltages or somehow shorting out into the signal line. It seems to be always the power delivery system which is failing, which is good because I've taken steps to try to improve that situation and address it. We've added diodes, stuff like that. So hopefully as we go, the reliability of them should improve, but so far it has been way better than I ever could have expected. I really need to take all of the tech out of my tractors. If you have any of my tech GPSs or them wee boxes, please put them inside over winter. If you have any tech of any kind, do not leave them in tractors over winter. Although I'm saying that and I've done it, but we only finished using that 4 weeks ago, so I'll do that this afternoon, okay? I'll take everything out of the tractors and put them in a nice dry room over winter. Let's go look at the GPS system. This kind of needs an entire video. I will do an entire video on it at some point. I'm just going to give you a really quick summary now. In a future video, we'll get into the details as to what it all does, how it works, how I've developed it further over the last couple of years. But for now, I'll give you a really quick summary and we'll use the 8S to do it. Being back in this tractor makes me miss summer, but anyway, we'll look at the GPS. Basically, you can see our entire farm here. We're set up to sow fertilizer. It's designed to try to keep it simple. So if you touch anywhere on the screen, it'll turn paint on and zoom you in, and that will show you where you're driving. And then the other button is your AB line, which is up at the top there. So if it was someone new and you had to tell them how to work the GPS, the idea is if it would focus, touch anywhere on the screen and you're good to go. We also have nutrient management records. This is where the money is made, to be honest, even though no one seems to use it. Well, I have one person properly use it and a few people to use it, but I need to get people to use it properly next year. You can do cool stuff like you can view your soil samples on a map. So this is for pH. You can see red is poor, yellow is okay but not great, green is for soil samples. Let me zoom in. So you can get the idea. You can do the same for phosphorus. This is my grazing block. They're high for phosphorus. Let me zoom out. I zoomed in too much. The rest of my farm is pretty much perfect for phosphorus, and then we can also go to potassium, and you can see the fields that are low in potassium and really need some muriate of potash, which is 0060. If you click on the fertilizer tab, you can see nitrogen available. So over the summer, you can sow your fields, and just with a click of a button, you can see the fields you really need to apply fertilizer to. As you can see, because we're in the middle of winter, everywhere needs fertilizer. There is heaps more within the GPS system, but it deserves its own video. So I'm not going to tell you the rest of it. We'll do that in a later video. One of the best things about building your own tech is if you think of anything, you can do it. So the little hydraulic sensor orange boxes you've seen in the other tractor, they will communicate with the GPS system over Bluetooth. So I have a setup where if my dad's spreading slurry, he has no choice but to record where he's applying the slurry, and it makes a variable field map of what he's applied, because the hydraulic sensor is triggering the orange box, which is then sending the signal to the GPS to tell it that we're spreading slurry, and then I can record how much area the slurry spread over and then save that into a mapped file. So that saves it to the internet, and then I can view that on my computer. So is that information useful? No, absolutely not, but it's just cool to be able to do stuff like that. Our last stop before we get to the parlor office and we go into the software side of things is like the project graveyard. So I apologize for the mess, but everyone has a shed where they throw all the stuff they don't use. So these projects are some of the first things that I built. We're probably talking 5, 6, 7 years ago. They were used substantially, like the calf feeder. This thing here, it was used for 2 years. The weighbridge down there, it was used for 3 or 4 years. Both of these failed for the same reason, which was they generated data, but the data was not useful. So this calf feeder, it automatically fed nuts to the calves using a cereal dispenser, worked really well. It weighed the calves every day using weigh cells, and it also weighed how much meal the calves ate and read an EID tag, so you could assign all of this data to individual calves. Of all the data I collected and the graphs I made, the data out of this calf feeder was my favorite. I was able to make scatter graphs of growth rate versus age. I was able to identify calves which weren't growing and treat them. And one of the really surprising things actually was that an injection, a multivitamin injection for them calves which weren't growing, I could have swore it worked. I'd done it a few times, so not enough for a scientific result, but every time I injected them with a multivitamin, their growth rates started doing really well. I learned a lot from this project. I really want to do another better version of this. It's just getting the time, and the fact there's engineering and having to build a frame, I really hate that stuff. So that's the main reason I haven't done it. I am sort of actively seeking out someone to build this frame for me, and I can just do the electronics, but really good project. The range of growth rates within a single batch of calves was incredible. Some calves might have been doing 1.2 kilos a day. Some calves were doing 0.1, basically not growing. The biggest issue I had with it was I was doing a small sample size, so I was only recording 6 calves at a time. So what do you do with that data? What do you do with the calves that are doing really well versus the calves that are doing bad? Like, what do you physically change? And I didn't have an answer for that. If I was able to record all of the calves, what I could do is choose different ages of weaning, because I'm also recording their meal intakes. So I could wean my calves more efficiently. I could also batch my calves more efficiently. I could have an underperforming batch which could be fed more milk for longer. The genetically strong calves, the calves with the genetically higher feed conversion ratio, identify them at a younger age, batch them together, ideally keep them for my herd because they probably do have a better feed conversion ratio. Like, the data on a farm scale you could get out of this is brilliant, but when you're doing 6 calves at a time, the data is not useful. So one of them projects at the back of my mind which I really want to finish. This is a very basic project. It was just a weighbridge. We used to weigh all our heifers before bulling age. We used to weigh our cows. I stopped all of that. There's actually the weighbridge base from the heifer feeder. I forgot I had that. Reason why I stopped weighing my heifers and stopped weighing the cows was it took a long time and the data was not that useful. Weighing cows is kind of pointless. I wasn't doing it often enough, and even if I was, it didn't provide any value. Weighing heifers for bulling age, whilst it's useful, you could have just decided based on looking at them. Does that make sense? It's like a small heifer is a small heifer. You don't need to waste your time weighing it to notice that. There is actually a third weighbridge, not really sure where it is, and it was for weighing the really young calves. So for 2 years I would have weighed the calves at birth, weighed the calves at 4 weeks, weighed the calves at 8 weeks, weighed the calves at 16 weeks, tracked their growth rates the whole way through. But again, the theme that's emerging, unless you're using the data, there's no point in recording it. I tried to build another calf feeder, an improved version of it a few years ago, probably 2 years ago now, and this is as far as I got. The big hurdle is having to do the steelwork, build the frame. I'm just not interested. So the last project I want to really quickly mention is not one that is on this farm, it is on another farm. It's a guy who finishes beef cattle, and for the last year I've been measuring water intake of each individual animal in 2 pens. So it was kind of set up as a proof of concept, like could I make a system that was reliable? It has been fairly reliable, I cannot complain. I basically didn't look at it for like 6 months and it kept running. At the minute I haven't checked on it in like a month. It seems to still be running as far as I'm aware. I haven't heard anything. So I'm building 2 more systems for the same guy. They're going to be a slightly different design. They're going to be more similar to the water drinker control systems. But I suppose the real difference there is that he is measuring intake per animal, which means that there needs to be an RFID reader, which is what I have in this box. I ended up buying 3 of them. You always need a redundancy. And people sometimes might see the stuff I build and wonder, like, am I just buying parts and sticking them together? What does he mean he's built a RFID cattle reader? Well, the stuff arrives to me like this, like a copper loop and a little circuit board, which outputs a real random format of characters. They're called hexadecimals, and to be able to read the just drop something. To be able to read the RFID tags, which look like this, from that reader, okay? It took me about 2 days of ridiculously complex code to figure it out. So when I say I'm building stuff, I am going as far back as I can go. Bar wrapping this coil myself, I'm going back far. So that project to measure the water intake has been really, really interesting. It's been really good for me to have a customer who keeps me responsible for making sure it all runs properly. And especially with it being so far away, it's like an hour away from my house. So I need to always think about trying to keep things reliable, keep them simple, and make sure they will work over the long term. I have 2 more of them drinkers to install in the next few weeks, and we are adding the automatic drain function, which you will have seen in my drinkers. Again, because I'm building now for someone else, I'm trying to improve the design. So on my drinkers, I'm using a linear actuator to basically open a manual valve. But on his drinkers, I am fitting these, which are motorized valves. So again, it's about making the system more reliable. This is a better solution, and I can give him a spare, for example, that will clip in. So if something does go wrong, I don't have to travel there. It can just be a spare sitting ready to go. Screw this off, screw the new one on, and you're back going again. So whether it is the tanker timer orange boxes or the GPS systems or the water drinkers on another farm, what I've learned over the last 2 years is that building a commercial product for customers is a lot more difficult than building something for yourself. It's a lot more difficult, but you definitely end up with a better product at the end of it. So a lot of them products which are derelict, which I'm not using, the design was bad to begin with. They weren't modular. They were a custom built project, a one-off. I only built one, didn't build any more. So if something broke, it was a real pain to fix. So now everything I'm building is designed to be modular. So for example, my water drinkers, the control box is modular. They're a uniform design. I have spares manufactured. The junction box is all able to be taken apart easily. So if a sensor breaks, it's a matter of unclipping some Waco connectors, fitting a new sensor, clipping it back in. There's no soldering, you don't have to take things away. That sort of smart design with failure in mind is something which I think I'm getting better at, and I'm better at understanding how important that is. I know I look like I'm trying to hack Red Tractor or something, but I'm not. This is just 2 examples of a piece of software which I have running on my computer. There is more software than I could show you in an hour-long video, so I'm going to just show you these 2 examples and then we'll get to the farm software. But basically, this is my server, which hosts an API which collects all of the data generated from my GPS systems all over Northern Ireland. There's even one in Belgium. From my Slurry Equip app for the tanker timer stuff, for the water controller, for the timers, for the lights to turn on and off. Everything is fed through this API. This is what it looks like, so it's continuously receiving data streams. And over here we have the code which is like running in the background to control the drinkers. So it's also logging the flow rate of the tank in there. I didn't actually show you that. There's more controllers everywhere, right? Just accept that. So I can tell at the minute that the tank that my water, that my plate cooler feeds into is currently sitting at 109 centimeters in depth. So just so you know that. I can tell you that we're currently using 1.55 kilowatts of power on the farm. I can tell you that in the last 10 minutes, we have drank 9.3 litres from the drinker on the left-hand side of the cow house, and we currently have a flow rate of 19 litres per minute. Useful information. All of this data showing like this or saved in a table is not useful data. Everything I record in this farm, whether it's milk recording, milk yields, calving, heat dates, what bull went where, none of that data is useful in and of itself. To make it useful, that's where the challenge and the skill comes in. And that'll lead us on nicely to my farm software. Now this software is old. I have not written anything new for this software package in probably 3 or 4 years. And it did take me like 3 or 4 years of work, just constantly adding stuff to it. But it has been very robust, very reliable, and extremely useful. And one of the interesting things about this is that when parts have failed and broken, if I am not motivated to fix them, it means they're not that useful. Anything that's still working, you know it's useful because I've been motivated to fix it because I missed it. So this is like your landing page, your KPIs. You'll notice I have not fixed animal numbers. That should tell you everything you need to know about how useful that graph was. We have our daily feed use. So tons per cow, the green bar is the last year. Honestly, I don't know why it's so low. I have checked and my dockets reflect this. My milk from forage is well over 3,000 litres this year, but I didn't intend to feed that little meal. So that sort of confused me a wee bit. This is our KPIs. So the average of the NMR 500 is the white line. You can think of that as an average dairy farm. If we're on the left of that, we are worse. If we're on the right of that, we are better. We can scroll back and see where we were 2 years ago, for example. So the little light box is where we were 2 years ago. So you can see that our milk yields have got worse. Our fat and protein has improved a lot. Our cell counts are very good and have improved. Our fertility is very good and has remained fairly static. And our age at exit and stuff is below average as well, heavily linked to TB at the minute. So our health panel is still obviously used and is really useful. Our food care panel is not used. I don't record food care records anymore. One of the nice things about this is when you enter a health issue and you enter the product, it automatically populates the batch number. And if you then have a new batch number to enter, you can enter it down here, and you can then choose which batch number you're currently using, and you can set disposal date or set as default. So this is the current Sinulux tubes we're using, and whenever we save a health record, it will automatically populate this field and save it against it. And if you buy a new product, you can just add it here. Simple. That is very, very useful for Red Tractor and medicine records, so long as you don't accidentally forget to record one. I could be here all day. I need to skip through some of this stuff, but we have milk recording records. We can upload the milk recording records just by selecting the file. We have calving panels that show your calving pattern and your predicted calving pattern, what bulls you're getting heifers out of, or one bull calves out of, how many of each sire you have in the herd. We have a dry cow panel which shows you your success of drying off. So when the cow was dry, how many days she was dry. That did not go well. Her cell count when she went dry, her cell count when she came in, was she protected or cured? This is a really useful box. I always check this. Your drying pattern. We have breeding tools, like a bull selector tool to mate each individual animal. We have heat dates to enter heat and AI dates. I'll just load up this panel. So this is the bull selector panel. I'll go into more detail in a separate video on this. I don't want to drag this video out too long. But basically, you search the animal, gives you their lactation curves. The little circle is when they went and calve, so you get an idea of their fertility based over their lactation. And then it gives you a list of all the bulls that I have in the tank, and it weights them based on the linear. So you can see this cow has a pretty poor rump angle, so we're trying to improve that. And then this cow was out of a sire called Brooke, absolute piece of garbage, never used genomics, that's a story for another day. And then this was the mother. The mother was scored, and obviously we have the linear from the sire, and that gets you this little graph. So the hashed bar is where this linear predicted she would be, and the colored bar is where she was actually scored after she calved as a heifer. And then you can predict where it would end up. So if we do crimson, if we mated this cow to this bull, this is the linear we would expect. And the expected linear is surprisingly accurate. There is way more I could show you in this software package. It does all the financial records, all our VAT records, keeps up-to-date cost of production records, does the financial accounts for the accountant, links all that into your management records. It's really, really useful. So before I get heaps of people asking me, can I have your farm software? The answer would be yes, if it would work for you. It will not work for you. The code behind this, okay, I wrote 6-7 years ago. It's terrible. If I wanted to make this a commercial product, something people could use, something I could share, I'd have to start from scratch. And it is genuinely a year's work. Like, I mean a year's work to get this to a commercial product. It is something I'm thinking about. It is a goal of mine, but my plan is to start small. Start with a test to see if I can get users to engage with a simple part of the software. And what I'm going to start with, and it's going to be released in the next few weeks, I've been working on it with a friend of mine behind the scenes for a few months, is a really simple tool for selecting bulls, and it shows you the bull's history. So it shows you when you bought the bull, what was his figures and what are the figures now. What happened when the bull went proven. You can track bulls over time. It also is a better interface for searching for new bulls. So it's a really small niche part of what my software does, but to keep it small to start with, test the market, see if people will use it, that's the goal. Fundamentally, what makes my proposal for farm software, if I ever do develop a commercial one, what makes it different? It will be free forever. There will be no charge. I know I promised you a tour of the lab at the end of this video, but it'll have to do for another week. My videos have become like half movies, which I never intended for. I remember whenever I started this YouTube channel, I was aiming for 10 minutes a video. I went way over that way too often, so I'm going to try to keep this one shorter. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like. If you have any questions or feedback or comments, stick them down below. And if you want to follow my journey in this weird world of farming and tech and what I get up to, drop me a subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. But thank you all for watching, and I'll be back next week.